The first message came as a whisper. It traveled from the blackness between galaxies. We almost missed the sound. It was ancient and cold and utterly final. It did not speak of conquest or surrender. It did not offer terms or ask for tribute. It promised only one thing: an end. An end to our sun, our worlds, our children. An end to every song we had ever sung. Our listening posts on Titan and Triton caught it first. The signal was not energy or radiation. It felt more like a psychic scar across the void, a wave of pure predatory intent. We knew then something terrible was coming for us. For a time we debated its meaning. Some called it a hoax, others a natural star-born phenomenon, but the feeling of dread was undeniable. It settled deep in our bones, a cold certainty that our time was over. Our greatest fleets were assembled beyond Neptune's orbit. The pride of Earth and her colonies stood ready. We had battleships the size of small moons. We had destroyers that could crack a continent. We were the masters of our own little corner of the universe. We watched the enemy approach on our screens. It was not a fleet. It was a single entity, a living shadow. It blotted out the distant stars as it moved. Its size was impossible to measure. It was less a ship and more a hole in reality. Our commanders gave the order to fire. Trillions of tons of energy and matter crossed the void. Lances of pure light struck the shadow. Missiles with sun-hot warheads detonated against its form. The silent darkness of space lit up like a new dawn. We thought nothing could survive such a storm. We were wrong. The shadow absorbed it all. It did not shudder. It did not slow. It simply consumed our fury and continued on. Then it struck back. Not with weapons, but with its mind. A psychic scream tore through our crews. Our best pilots turned their ships against each other. Our mightiest cannons fired on our own command centers. We watched our best ships become cosmic dust. We saw heroes of 100 battles die in madness. The battle was over before it truly began. Our last stand was a footnote. Our fleets were gone. Our best and bravest were dead or insane. The monster continued its slow, patient journey toward Earth. Panic gripped our worlds. There was no defense left. There was nowhere to run. So, we turned to our darkest secrets. We looked to the sciences we had forbidden, the technologies we had locked away for being too dangerous. The Genesis mandate was our last resort. A plan born of absolute desperation. The old laws were broken. The old fears were cast aside. The mandate was simple and horrifying. If we could not build a weapon to kill the monster, we would become the weapon. We would change ourselves. We would unmake our own humanity. We would descend into the dark to fight the darkness. It was a choice made without a real choice. The alternative was extinction. We knew the price would be terrible, but we were willing to pay it. To save our home, we would sacrifice our very souls. The bioforges were built in secret deep beneath the earth. They were part science lab, part temple of horrors. We walked into them as soldiers. We were men and women from every nation. We were volunteers, the last of our military forces. We said our goodbyes to the sun. You looked upon green fields and blue skies for the last time. We entered the cold steel wounds. The process began with fire and pain. Our bodies were taken apart, molecule by molecule. Our DNA was rewritten with alien code we had found in the ruins of a long-dead race, a race that had also faced this foe. They had failed. Their warning was etched into the genes themselves. We ignored it. We pushed the science further than they ever dared. We emerged from the forges months later. We were no longer human. Our skin was like hardened armor. Our eyes saw in spectrums we never knew existed. Our hands were now claws that could rip through starship hulls. We became living weapons, barely human. We were faster, stronger, and far more lethal. But the change was more than skin deep. Our minds were altered just as much as our bodies. We looked at our creators, our fellow humans, and felt nothing. No kinship, no compassion. Only a cold, calculating distance. We were tools forged for a single terrible purpose. The universe felt different now. It was no longer a silent, empty place. It was screaming. We could hear the background radiation of space-time. We could feel the gravitational pull of distant stars. We could taste the solar winds on our new skin. These new senses were a torrent of information. At first it was overwhelming, a constant roar of cosmic noise. But our new minds learned to filter it, to find the signal in the static. And we found the signal we were looking for, the psychic presence of the great monster. It was no longer a distant dread. It was a tangible thing, a vast, hungry consciousness sweeping through our system. We could feel its thoughts. They were not complex. They were simple, pure, and terrifying. Hunger, domination, annihilation. We felt its hunger as if it were our own. That connection was a double-edged sword. It allowed us to track the monster perfectly, but it also exposed us to its sheer alien nature. Its thoughts were a poison, a cold that threatened to extinguish the last embers of our humanity. We had to fight to remember who we were, even as we embraced what we had become. We left the hidden forges behind. We rose from the earth not in ships but on our own power. We were beings of the void now. The vacuum of space was as natural to us as air once was. Our hunt began in the asteroid belt. The monster had seeded the system with its spawn. These lesser creatures were horrifying. Nightmares of chitin and tentacles and razor-sharp teeth. They had swarmed our outer colonies. They had devoured survey ships and mining outposts. To the old humanity, they were unstoppable terrors. To us, they were gnats. We met them in the cold darkness. We tore through their swarms with savage efficiency. Our claws sheared through their armored hides. Our minds blasted their simple consciousness into oblivion. There was no strategy, no tactics, just pure, overwhelming force. It was a slaughter. We were faster, stronger, more vicious than anything they had ever encountered. For the first time, the monster's tide was pushed back. We carved a path of destruction through its advance forces. We were not defending, we were attacking. We took the fight to the enemy's hunting grounds. It felt good. It felt right. A little too right. But in the quiet moments between battles, something strange would happen. The ghost would stir in the machine of our new minds, a memory from before, the flicker of a forgotten life, the scent of rain on summer grass, the taste of a favorite food, the warmth of a lover's touch. These moments were fleeting and sharp. They were painful reminders of everything we had lost. A child's name would bubble up from the depths of our consciousness. We would see a face in our mind's eye, but be unable to place it. Was that a wife, a brother, a friend? The details were fading. The emotional connection was already gone. We looked at our clawed hands. We tried to remember what it felt like to hold someone. The memory was hollow, a data point without the feeling attached. We were becoming more efficient. Our minds were clearing of useless emotional clutter. We were becoming better weapons. We told ourselves this was a necessary sacrifice, but sometimes, in the dark, a name would surface, and for a moment, the monster in the mirror would feel a pang of something ancient, something it could almost remember, something called loss. A joke made its way through our silent psychic network. What do you call a human who forgets his own mother? A promotion. Nobody laughed. The great monster felt our victories. It felt the death of its countless spawn. It had rolled over entire starfaring civilizations without a thought. It had consumed galaxies and snuffed out suns. It had never faced anything like us. We were an anomaly, a sudden violent spike in the data. Its vast ancient mind turned its attention toward us. It was a gaze that could buckle spacetime, a focus that could extinguish stars. For the first time in millennia, it felt something other than hunger. It felt a flicker of interest. It saw not prey, but a challenge, a rival. A psychic command went out to its remaining forces. They stopped their scattered attacks. They regrouped. They formed a defensive perimeter around the great monster itself. The hunt was over. The real war was about to begin. The beast was no longer just passing through. It had found a reason to stay. It wanted to see what these strange new creatures were made of. It chose the battlefield, Earth. The war came home to the cradle of humanity. The monster's main body descended from the high dark. It was a living mountain of void flesh and alien geometry. Its shadow fell across the planet, casting entire continents into an unnatural twilight. Its remaining spawn, the strongest of its brood, rained down from the skies. They were not the mindless things we fought in the belt. These were alphas, larger, smarter, and far more deadly. They bypassed our orbital defenses. They landed in our oceans and on our continents. They began their harvest. We met them there. We, the transformed, the saviors, the abominations. We fought them in the ruins of our own cities. We battled them in the depths of our poisoned seas. We tore them apart in the skies above the fields we once called home. We fought to protect a world we could never walk on again, a world whose air was now poison to us, whose sunlight was now a painful glare. We saw the faces of the people we were saving. They looked out from their underground bunkers. They watched us on their screens. They saw us tear their enemies apart, and they looked at us with the same terror they held for the monsters we fought. We were their salvation, and we were their greatest nightmare. During a lull in the fighting, I saw my reflection. It was in the polished hull of a crashed orbital fighter. I stopped. The fighting raged around me, but for a moment it all faded away. I looked at the thing staring back. It was not me, not the man I remembered. The face was long and angular. The skin was the color of storm clouds, shot through with veins of faint blue light. The eyes were black pits that drank the light. Two large insect-like mandibles flanked a mouth filled with needle-sharp teeth. Horns swept back from the brow. It was a thing from a nightmare, a demon carved from star stuff and rage. I tried to find a trace of my old self in that reflection, the soldier who loved bad jokes, the man who had a family waiting for him. There was nothing, only a cold, alien intelligence, a predator's gaze. The mirror did not lie. We had become monsters to end the monster, and in the process, we had become something just as terrifying. The reflection tilted its head, mimicking my movement. It seemed to be judging me, and it found me worthy. Then another voice entered the psychic noise. It was not the monster's hungry static. It was not the cold logic of my transformed brothers and sisters. This was new. It was impossibly old, calm, powerful, and filled with a sorrow that felt as deep as the universe itself. The voice came from a ship, a vessel that appeared as if from nowhere in high orbit. It was made of light and crystal. It shimmered like a heat haze against the stars. The message was broadcast on all channels, psychic and radio. It was for the humans still hiding. And it was for us. An ancient starborn race broke its long silence. They called themselves the Watchers. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had witnessed the birth and death of stars. They had seen the great monster before. They told us our fight was valiant. They told us our sacrifice was profound. Then they gave us their warning. Our cure was worse than the disease. The alien DNA we had used, the code we thought was a weapon, was not. It was a seed. The race that created it had not been trying to fight the monster. They had been trying to become its successor. They had engineered a new form of apex predator, one that could consume and grow just like the great monster, but faster, stronger, more ambitious. They had failed to control it. The Watchers had been forced to cleanse that entire sector of space to stop them. They warned us. The transformation was not finished. It was just beginning. The Watchers' warning spread through us like a virus. It fractured our unity. A schism grew between us, the transformed. The revelation reawakened dormant emotions in some. Fear, regret, a desperate, aching need to be human again. They saw the path we were on, a road leading to a throne of galactic terror. This faction argued we should stop. They believed we could find a way to reverse the process, or at least halt its progression. They clung to their last threads of humanity. They started calling themselves the Remnant. They tried to remember the faces of their loved ones. They fought to feel something, anything other than the cold hunger. But others among us scoffed at this weakness. They embraced the change. They saw the Watcher's warning not as a threat, but as a promise of ultimate power, a destiny far greater than anything humanity could have dreamed of. They called themselves the Ascended. They let go of their memories willingly. They purged the last vestiges of their former selves. Humanity was a cage. They were now free. The two sides stared at each other across a psychic battlefield. We were brothers in the forge, now divided. The Remnant saw the Ascended as lost souls. The Ascended saw the Remnant as flawed tools, clinging to a past that no longer mattered. The great monster was still a threat, but a new war was brewing. A war for the soul of humanity's terrible saviors. We had no time for our internal war, not yet. The great monster was wounded, but not defeated. It was regenerating, its vast psychic power focused on healing its form. We knew we had one chance to end this. We had to strike it now, while it was vulnerable, before it could adapt to our new way of war. The Remnant and the Ascended agreed on this one thing. The monster must die. We put our schism on hold. We moved as one, a united front of nightmares. We pursued the beast as it retreated into the outer darkness. We cornered it in the Oort cloud, a vast frozen graveyard of comets and ice at the edge of our solar system. The final battle began. It was not a fight of ships and lasers. It was a primordial struggle of wills and bodies. We swarmed its colossal form like angry insects. The Ascended reveled in the destruction. They tore at the monster with a joyful fury. The Remnant fought with a cold, grim determination. They were fighting for a home they could never return to. The great monster fought back with the fury of a dying god. It lashed out with tendrils of pure void that could erase matter from existence. It screamed a psychic death knell that shattered comets and boiled the ice of distant planetoids. The battle scarred the solar system forever. The orbits of dwarf planets were altered. A new asteroid belt was born from the debris. We paid a heavy price. Many of us were destroyed, their light extinguished in the void. But we did not relent. We pushed it to the brink. We drove our collective will into its ancient mind. We clawed our way to its core. And we tore it apart. There was a final silent scream, a wave of psychic agony that washed over the entire system. And then, nothing. The monster was gone. Its constant, oppressive psychic presence, a pressure we had lived with for so long, vanished. The universe suddenly felt quiet, empty. A profound emptiness now filled the void it left. For the humans on Earth, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated relief. The nightmare was over. Their saviors had won. They celebrated in their bunkers. They looked to the stars not with terror, but with hope. For us, the silence was different. It was deafening. The monster's mind had been a terrible thing, but it had also been a presence, a focal point for our new existence, a reason for what we had become. Now, that reason was gone. We were weapons with no war to fight, monsters with no greater evil to justify our existence. We floated in the darkness, surrounded by the wreckage of our final battle. The silence stretched on.
And in that silence, our own internal divisions began to stir once more. We saved them. We saved humanity from the monster. We paid a price beyond reckoning. Our bodies, our minds, our very souls were the cost of their survival. On Earth, they are rebuilding. They are singing songs about the dark angels who saved them from the sky beast. They do not know the truth of what we are. They do not know about the Watcher's warning. We drift in the outer dark, the remnant and the ascended. The schism is no longer a quiet debate. It is a cold war waiting to turn hot. The remnant looks back at the distant shining dot of Earth. They feel a ghost of love for it, a desire to protect it even from themselves. The ascended look outward, to the endless sea of stars. They feel the call of the void, the hunger for power, the destiny written in our new DNA is awakening. The silence of the monster's death has left a vacuum, and the galaxy now wonders who will save it from us. We are the heirs to the void. We are the new monsters, and our story is just beginning.